Good morning. My name is Tian. Welcome to the Fine Roots podcast. Today is going to be a reflection slash slash. It was just something that happened that kind of made me rethink some things. And so from time to time, I like to go out and write because it changes the environment. So the other day I went to a local coffee shop, and I usually just get something just to get a place to sit down and write. And this place is kind of dim lit. It's not the brightest. So it kind of gives like a moody scene. So when I write, I'm kind of in my zone. And people usually like do their own thing. There are people that has their laptop and just do the work there. So I joined the crowd, I got my drink, and I sat down on this bench that is shared among 3 separate tables. So the table is separate, but the bench is shared. So I'm sitting in the middle and doing my work in my flow. After like a couple of minutes, I just completely tune out to anything that exists in the store because I become so hyper-focused. It has to be something very abrupt to take me out of that flow. And today was the day. Right next to me sat a guy with a burrito. And at first, it didn't really bother me. But then I began to feel like these vibrations and the bench began to shake. And that kind of took me out of my flow. And I'm thinking to myself, why is the bench shaking? I can see him in my peripheral that he's eating. But why is he shaking? And then, so I snapped out of my flow. And then I'm kind of like looking at him from my peripherals that he's eating this burrito very aggressively. And it almost feels like it's very stressful, like eating this burrito. And so I began to feel rather more irritated, stressful myself, and kind of just agitated because I was just writing and all of a sudden like this bench began to shake. And I don't know who I was irritated at or what the irritation was towards, but I just felt it. So at first I thought, well, am I judging this person? Because I know nothing about him. And then it's not right for me to judge because he could literally just have fought like a graveyard shift. He could have been through tons of problems in his life that I have no idea about. And here he is just eating his burrito like he survived the night, for instance. I don't know. The fact is that I have no idea what this guy is going through. But I know that I felt like this irritation. And so I tried to go back to writing, but, he kept on eating this burrito in ways that I couldn't focus. Because there's a few things that really grabs my attention. And that is chewing with your mouth open. You make that choppy noise. That really grinds my gears. And things like this, eating in ways that is very just abnormal, because I like to take my time when I eat. So when things like this happen, it's just so out of my scale that it is like I can't focus. So I try to go back to writing, but it doesn't work. So I end up just watching this guy in my peripheral. And then after that event happened, he finished his eating, he drank, and then he kind of sat there for a little bit. He sighed, and then he went off. And so that was so weird. Not weird, but that was so kind of strange in a way, because just as simple as eating could really abrupt my thinking in a way. So I got home that day and I was thinking to myself, was I judging this guy? because I don't know anything about him. Like, how can I judge him? So no. Was I irritated at him? Was I annoyed by him? Or was I annoyed by the fact that I got interrupted? Or was I annoyed by the fact that the bench was shared? And there's nothing that he did intentionally. It's not like he sat next to me intentionally and started vibrating the chair intentionally, because that'd be vile. And it's not like I sat there myself and started thinking about like these thoughts. I didn't actively sit here and think about him like, damn, look at him eating this burrito. He is just devouring that thing like a hunger man. You know, like I didn't do that, because if I did that, that would be a different story. But I didn't do that. So this reminded me a lot of like a cloud, because when a thought arises, that's kind of like when a cloud rises. And if I were to think about this thought for a longer period of time, like a cloud will rise up and accumulate over time, only when it rains will the ground be affected by, let's say, the rain. So it will get wet. So in a similar way, only when I think about this and accumulate more thought about this, and when I do something about it, the action, if I did something about that moment, then it would solidify into the reality. So that, in other words, that is the rain. I would have caused some kind of rain upon life if I did something about it. So if I came up to him and said, hey, excuse me, sir, you are eating in a very aggressive ways that interrupts my flow, and I do not like it. Can you please stop or remove yourself from this vicinity? You know, if I did that, that would have caused some rain, but I didn't do that. Luckily, if I did that, that would have been like, I would have started some kind of stuff there. But that wasn't the case, luckily. So essentially, the thought is not what defines a person. The thought is just like the cloud that just comes up and sometimes it just passes by. Sometimes the cloud is just there. On a sunny day, sometimes you just see a cloud and it doesn't do anything. And then some days there's a massive amount of clouds, still doesn't do anything. It's just there. It probably does something in some kind of level, but in a sense that it doesn't rain yet. It hasn't rained. Only when it rains is it when it will be affected by the ground, in a sense of water, for instance, because the cloud is the precipitation that is accumulated in the air. So that could be like the thought, and when it accumulates enough, that's when it will release. In other words, if I were to think about something enough and release it into an action, that is when it would affect or alter the current world in some way or shape or form. And so I found myself blaming myself for having those thoughts, because I felt like I'm judging this person, but it could have been other reasons. It wasn't like I could have been irritated that I got interrupted. I could have been stressed because I could feel his emotions. It could have been like, why is this bench shared among 3 tables and I could just feel the vibration? Why am I blaming this guy? Am I blaming myself? There's so many reasons to consider for. Like, if it was to rain, is the cloud to be blamed? Is the ocean to be blamed? Is the sun to be blamed for? Who's to blame? And even then, it doesn't matter who's to blame, because what matters is that it happened. If rain would happen, it doesn't matter really who to blame for. What good does it do? It doesn't do anything. Like if it rained right now, what good does it do if I blame the sun? What good does it do if I blame the mountain? Why is that mountain so tall? Why can't it be shorter? This doesn't do anything. It just formulate more thoughts and it formulate non-action. What really matters is that what I do about it. So for instance, in that case, luckily I didn't do anything. But if I did something, that's what would have been the action of that time, or that would have been the case that would have changed the scenario. So when I came home and I reflected on this, it doesn't really matter that whether or not like it was his fault, the store's fault, whatever fault that caused like this discomfortness. The fact is that that was the case. I felt discomfort. The fact is that I felt irritated. I don't know why, I don't know where, but none of that's all speculation, because it could have just been like I could have a trigger about someone that's eating in a certain way that makes loud noises. But the more important part about this is that it is the action that really matters. So having the thoughts doesn't define a person. It is what a person does with those thoughts that defines them. So let's say if I just think about things, just having clouds, just setting it up there, okay? And if I want to do something about those thoughts, I would dwell on them and then cause some action. So again, blaming ourselves for having thoughts is not fair, because sometimes we just get random thoughts. That's just how clouds get formed. Like it forms due to the nature of how life is. It's just the ocean. The sun will heat the ocean, and the ocean would cause precipitation and rise up to the air and then become a cloud, and it will move around, and sometimes it will move into our space. Like let's say above our head, we get the thought, and it's only when we like, oh, look, it's a cloud. And then we begin to think more about it, and we add to that cloud. So we make it heavier, 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 and then it begins to rain. But if the cloud is just passing by and we say, oh, a cloud. Okay, anyways, as I was saying, it could have just been like that, because sometimes random inspiration, random thoughts comes and goes. But it is only when those thoughts are capitalized, like is done something, like something is done about them, that it really begins to solidify. So blaming ourselves for our thoughts doesn't define who we are. Feeling bad about the thoughts we have is not really fair either, because unless we sat there and actively produced those thoughts, then that is to be something that to be considered. But otherwise, thoughts will come and go. Inspiration comes and go. It is only when action is taking place that it matters. So, lesson to be learned: thoughts comes and goes, and don't feel bad about having thoughts, because that's just human. We get thoughts. They come and go. It is only when action is taken upon those thoughts that it will change its course. So, in this case, I didn't go up to the guy. I didn't say anything to the guy. I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.